A city can build 100-story towers, but just 30 to 50 millimeters of rain in a few hours is enough to bring it to a halt. In 2021, New York flooded its subway after a storm that wasn't even classified as extreme. Mumbai has been paralyzed by 944 millimeters in 24 hours, more than once. Bangkok floods more often even though rainfall hasn't increased. Cities don't lack technology. Water simply has nowhere left to go. So if the rain isn't new, what exactly is failing beneath our feet? It usually starts underground. Before streets flood. Before cars stall. Before anyone checks the weather app again. Water rises in places no one is watching. Basement parking garages. Electrical rooms. Server floors. In July 2021, New York subway tunnels filled in minutes. Trains stopped. Power cut. Not during a hurricane. Not during a once-in-a-century storm. Just rain moving faster than the city could drain it. In Mumbai, entire neighborhoods have learned the timing. When rainfall crosses 200 millimeters, people stop driving. At 300, shops close. At 400, water reaches chest height in ground floor homes. In 2005, 944 millimeters fell in 24 hours. But the real damage came later. Sewage mixed with floodwater. Diseases followed. Recovery took months. The drainage system never changed. In Bangkok, flooding doesn't need headlines anymore. A few hours of rain is enough to push water back up through drains. The city sinks 1 to 2 centimeters every year. Concrete spreads. Soil disappears. Water has nowhere to soak in, so it turns around and comes back up. What makes these moments unsettling isn't the rain. It's the silence before the failure. No alarms. No warning signs. Just water rising from below, flooding places that were never designed to get wet. Cities spend billions building upward. Glass. Steel. Elevation. But the most fragile systems sit underground, unchanged, overloaded, invisible. And once water crosses a certain line, everything modern depends on shuts down at the same time. If this keeps happening in cities with money, technology, and planning power, what does that say about the system holding them up? Urban flooding is rising faster than rainfall. That's the part most cities don't like to say out loud. Between 1970 and 2020, global flood damage costs increased more than sevenfold, reaching over $80 billion a year. But during the same period, average global rainfall did not increase at the same pace. In many cities, it barely changed at all. In the United States, so-called nuisance flooding has increased by more than 300% since the 1990s, according to NOAA. These aren't hurricanes. These are ordinary storms. New York now experiences flooding events with as little as 25 to 40 millimeters of rain, levels that older drainage systems were never meant to handle repeatedly. Subway shutdowns now cost the city hundreds of millions of dollars per year in lost productivity and emergency repairs. In Europe, the pattern repeats. London's Victorian sewer system was designed for a population of 4 million. Today, the city serves nearly 9 million, with far more paved surface than a century ago. The Thames Barrier protects against storm surges from the sea, but inland flooding from surface runoff has quietly become the dominant risk. Insurance claims from urban flooding in the UK now exceed £1.2 billion annually, even in years without major storms. Asia shows the problem at a different scale. In India, urban flood damage is estimated at $3 to $5 billion per year, concentrated in cities like Mumbai, Chennai, and Bengaluru. Mumbai's drainage system was designed in the late 1800s to handle 25 millimeters of rain per hour. In recent years, the city has recorded rainfall rates exceeding 60 millimeters per hour multiple times, not because storms doubled in strength, but because runoff doubled in speed. Concrete replaced wetlands. Water stopped soaking in. In Southeast Asia, Bangkok floods even during moderate rain. The city loses 1 to 2 centimeters of elevation every year due to groundwater extraction. Combined with sealed surfaces, this means gravity is slowly turning against the drainage system itself. Jakarta faces the same problem at a more extreme pace. More than 40% of the city now lies below sea level, and urban flooding occurs dozens of times a year, even outside monsoon peaks. Globally, over 2 billion people now live in cities exposed to high flood risk. By 2030, that number is expected to rise to nearly 3 billion, Not because the climate suddenly changed, but because cities expanded faster than their underground systems. Roads widened, towers rose, parking garages went deeper. Drainage capacity stayed mostly the same. What makes the scale hard to grasp is that flooding doesn't fail gradually. It fails all at once. When drainage capacity is exceeded, even briefly, water backs up into basements, tunnels, substations, and data centers. In 2021, a single flash flood event shut down parts of China's Zhengzhou metro, killing 14 people in tunnels designed to be safe. The rainfall was extreme, but the system had no buffer left. This is the global pattern. Urban flooding is no longer a disaster problem. It's an infrastructure math problem. Every city has a maximum flow rate underground. Once runoff exceeds that number, the city stops working. And in most major cities, that limit is being crossed more often each year. If flooding is increasing faster than rain, and damage is rising faster than population, what exactly is pushing these systems past their breaking point? Cities aren't flooding because they're getting wetter. They're flooding because they're getting harder. Every decade, more ground is sealed. Asphalt, concrete, glass towers sitting on slabs that water can't pass through. What used to absorb rain now repels it. And once water can't go down, it has only one direction left. Here's the simple math cities avoid. Natural soil can absorb 25 to 50% of rainfall during a storm. Urban surfaces absorb almost 0%. In dense city centers, runoff rates exceed 80 to 90%. That means nearly every drop of rain becomes surface water, moving fast, hitting drains all at once. Drainage systems were never designed for synchronized runoff at that scale. Most urban sewer systems were built for a different city. London's combined sewers date back to the 19th century. Paris relies on tunnels laid out when horses outnumbered cars. New York's core drainage network was sized decades before underground parking garages, deep basements, and data centers existed. These systems were engineered for peak flow assumptions that no longer match reality. The paradox is this: cities expand vertically and underground, but drainage capacity expands slowly, if at all. A new high-rise adds thousands of residents, sealed surfaces, and basement levels. The drainage beneath it often stays the same diameter pipe installed generations ago. The city looks modern above ground. Below ground, it's frozen in time. Climate change is often blamed, but the numbers don't fully support that narrative. In many cities, annual rainfall has increased by less than 5 to 10% over several decades. Flood incidents, meanwhile, have increased by 200 to 400%. The gap is explained by surface change, not sky change. Rainfall didn't suddenly multiply. Runoff did. There's another layer to the paradox. Modern flood defenses focus on extremes, not frequency. Seawalls, barriers, and retention basins are built to stop rare events. But everyday storms are now overwhelming systems more often. A drainage network doesn't fail because of one catastrophic day. It fails because it's exceeded slightly, repeatedly, until there's no margin left. Urban design quietly reinforces the problem. Streets are widened to move traffic faster. Sidewalks are paved edge to edge. Green space becomes decorative rather than functional. Stormwater is treated as waste to be removed quickly, not as a resource to be absorbed. Speed becomes the enemy. Water arrives at drains faster than gravity can move it away. The most uncomfortable contradiction is economic. Cities profit from density. Each new development increases tax revenue, land value, and short-term growth. But every square meter of sealed land increases long-term flood risk. The costs appear later. Repairs, insurance losses, emergency budgets, public health impacts. By the time the bill arrives, the development cycle has already moved on. This is why cities keep flooding even after upgrades. Pipes are replaced, pumps added, tunnels reinforced. But the basic equation stays unchanged. More runoff, same space to carry it. Engineers can optimize flow, but they can't create new gravity. Once capacity is reached, water doesn't negotiate. Urban flooding isn't a failure of engineering skill. It's a failure of priorities. Cities are built to maximize surface value, not subsurface resilience. The systems that matter most are buried, invisible, and politically easy to postpone. And as long as growth continues above ground while limits remain fixed below, flooding becomes less a surprise and more a scheduled outcome. Urban drainage doesn't fail by accident. It fails by design, budgeting, and timing. The system beneath a city is shaped by decisions made far from floodwater, in offices where what matters most is what can be seen, measured, and sold. Pipes don't cut ribbons. Roads do. Towers do. Drainage only shows up when it breaks. Most cities separate responsibility the same way. Planning controls what rises above ground. Utilities manage what runs below. Budgets follow visibility. A new boulevard, transit hub, or waterfront project promises returns within political cycles. A drainage upgrade promises nothing visible for years. When money is tight, underground work gets delayed. Again and again. The mechanics are predictable. A city approves a dense development. The project adds sealed surface, underground parking, and deeper basements. The developer contributes fees. The drainage system receives marginal upgrades, if any. Pipes downstream remain unchanged. The new load is absorbed quietly, until it isn't. When floods happen, responsibility is fragmented. Planning blames weather. Utilities blame outdated infrastructure. Developers point to approved permits. No single actor owns the failure. Procurement worsens the problem. Drainage upgrades are expensive, disruptive, and politically risky. They require tearing up streets, closing traffic, and spending billions on assets voters never see. So cities favor incremental fixes. Larger pumps, temporary storage tanks, smart sensors. These measures increase efficiency but not capacity. They push the system closer to its limit without moving the limit itself. Combined sewer systems add another layer. In cities like London, Paris, and parts of New York, stormwater and sewage share the same pipes. During heavy rain, the system has two options: flood streets, or discharge untreated wastewater into rivers. Many cities choose the latter. In the UK alone, combined sewer overflows released sewage into waterways over 300,000 times in a single year. The system stays operational. The damage shifts elsewhere. Maintenance is the quiet killer. Sediment builds up. Trash reduces effective pipe diameter. Illegal connections overload local lines. In some cities, up to 20 to 30% of drainage capacity is lost to blockage and neglect. Cleaning budgets are often the first to be cut. Preventive maintenance doesn't generate headlines. Flood response does. Then there's the accounting illusion. The benefits of development are immediate. Jobs, taxes, housing units. The costs of flooding are delayed and socialized. Insurance absorbs some losses. Public budgets absorb the rest. Residents pay through higher premiums and taxes. Developers move on. The system learns nothing. Technology doesn't save cities from this logic. Smart drainage systems can optimize flow by 10 to 20%. That helps on the margins. But when runoff increases by 50 to 100% due to surface sealing, optimization can't close the gap. Sensors can tell you when the system is failing. They can't stop it from failing. Case after case shows the same pattern. New York invested over $20 billion in stormwater management over several decades. Flooding frequencies still rose. London's Thames Tideway Tunnel, costing over £4 billion, addresses sewage overflows, not surface flooding. Bangkok spends billions annually on pumps and canals while sinking continues. Each project solves a slice of the problem. None reverse the underlying equation. The invisible machine works like this. Growth above ground accelerates. Capacity below ground grows slowly. Maintenance erodes what capacity exists. Responsibility fragments. Costs are deferred. Flooding becomes normalized. Each event is treated as an anomaly. In reality, it's the output of a system running exactly as designed. What makes this machine hard to stop is that it doesn't look like a machine. It looks like routine governance. Permits, budgets, infrastructure plans. Every decision makes sense in isolation. Together, they guarantee failure. Cities often say they're adapting. Green roofs, permeable pavements, retention ponds. These help locally. but they're rarely deployed at the scale needed to offset decades of surface loss. A few hectares of green space can't counter thousands of hectares of sealed land. Adaptation becomes symbolic rather than structural. The final constraint is time. Drainage systems are built for lifespans of 50 to 100 years. Urban form changes much faster. A city can double density in a generation. The pipes beneath it cannot. Once mismatched, the system stays mismatched for decades. This is the invisible machine beneath modern cities. Not corrupt, not malicious, just aligned toward short-term growth and long-term exposure. It doesn't need conspiracy to function. It only needs momentum. And once momentum takes over, flooding stops being a surprise. It becomes the cost of keeping the machine running. The pattern looks different in every city. The outcome is the same. Water arrives where systems were never designed to fail. Start with Jakarta. The city floods not just from rain, but from below. More than 40% of Jakarta now lies below sea level. Groundwater extraction causes the city to sink by 5 to 10 centimeters per year in some districts. Drainage canals lose slope. Gravity weakens. Even moderate rain backs water into streets. In 2020 alone, flooding displaced over 400,000 people and caused more than $1 billion in damage. Pumps run constantly. They buy time. They don't restore elevation. Move north to Bangkok. Rainfall hasn't dramatically increased over the last 3 decades. Flooding has. The city loses 1 to 2 centimeters of elevation every year while sealed surfaces expand outward. In 2011, flooding caused an estimated $45 billion in economic losses, disrupting global supply chains for electronics and automobiles. Since then, billions have been spent on pumps and barriers. Flood events still occur multiple times a year. The system fights physics with machinery. In Mumbai, drainage tells a longer story. The city's main stormwater system was designed in 1860 to handle 25 millimeters of rain per hour. Today, rainfall intensities exceeding 50 to 60 millimeters per hour occur regularly. In July 2005, 944 millimeters fell in 24 hours, killing over 1,000 people. Nearly 2 decades later, drainage capacity remains largely unchanged. Informal settlements and paved surfaces increased runoff. Every monsoon season repeats the same cycle. Streets flood, trains stop, sewage contaminates water, hospitals fill. New York shows how wealth doesn't guarantee resilience. The city's combined sewer system serves over 70% of the population. During heavy rain, wastewater is discharged directly into rivers to prevent backups. In 2021, remnants of Hurricane Ida caused flash flooding that killed 13 people in basement apartments. Rainfall rates exceeded 80 millimeters per hour in some locations, overwhelming drainage within minutes. Subway tunnels flooded not because they were low, but because upstream capacity was exhausted. Across the Atlantic, London faces quieter failures. The city records over 300,000 combined sewer overflow events per year, releasing untreated wastewater into rivers. Flooding increasingly affects surface transport, underground stations, and basements during storms that would have been manageable decades ago. The Thames Tideway Tunnel reduces sewage discharge, but surface runoff remains largely unaddressed. The fix solves one symptom while others grow. In China, rapid urbanization compresses decades of growth into years. Cities like Zhengzhou expanded sealed surfaces at unprecedented speed. In July 2021, a flash flood killed 14 people trapped inside metro tunnels. The rainfall was intense, but what made it deadly was the lack of buffer. Drainage filled. Water rushed into underground spaces designed for dry conditions. Emergency systems failed together. Latin America follows the same script. Sao Paulo floods during routine summer storms. The city paved over riverbanks and wetlands that once absorbed runoff. Annual flood-related losses exceed $1 billion, with poorer districts hit hardest. Drainage improvements focus on channels and reservoirs downstream, while upstream sealing continues. Africa's cities face a different constraint. Lagos, one of the fastest-growing cities in the world, floods frequently during the rainy season. Informal development blocks natural drainage paths. Maintenance budgets are thin. Drainage channels double as waste disposal sites. Effective capacity shrinks every year. Flooding becomes seasonal certainty rather than disaster. What ties these cities together isn't climate. It's geometry. Water volume increases slightly. Runoff speed increases dramatically. Drainage space stays fixed or shrinks. Once flow exceeds capacity, failure spreads laterally. Streets become rivers. Basements become traps. Power stations shut down to avoid damage. Mobile networks fail. Traffic gridlocks. The city doesn't degrade gradually. It collapses in layers. The economic damage compounds. Floods disrupt logistics hubs, ports, airports, and data centers. In 2012, flooding in Bangkok halted hard drive production worldwide, driving up prices for months. In New York, flood-related transit shutdowns cost hundreds of millions of dollars per year in lost productivity. Insurance premiums rise. Coverage retreats from high-risk zones. Costs shift from private to public. Health impacts follow quietly. Floodwater carries sewage, heavy metals, and industrial waste. After floods in Mumbai and Jakarta, spikes in waterborne diseases were recorded. Hospitals operate under strain. Recovery lasts longer than headlines. What's striking is how predictable these failures are. Flood maps show the same neighborhoods affected again and again. Damage reports repeat. Budgets increase. Capacity doesn't. Each flood is treated as an event. In reality, it's a location-specific output of system design. The map of destruction isn't random. It traces lines of inequality. Ground floors flood first. Basement dwellers drown first. Informal housing suffers the longest outages. Wealthier districts build defenses that redirect water elsewhere. The system distributes risk downward. Cities often respond by naming projects. Flood resilience plans. Climate adaptation strategies. Most focus on controlling water once it's already moving. Few restore space for water to slow down, spread out, or soak in. That would require undoing development, not just managing it. This is the global map. Different languages. Same mechanics. Cities grow upward and outward. Drainage stays constrained. Water follows physics, not policy. And when systems fail across continents in the same way, the problem isn't local mismanagement. It's structural. The most dangerous floods don't announce themselves. They don't come with days of warning or evacuation orders. They arrive quietly, moving through systems that were never meant to be seen by the public. On the evening of July 20th, 2021, rain began falling over Zhengzhou, a city of more than 12 million people in central China. Within hours, rainfall reached levels the city had never planned for. More than 600 millimeters fell in 3 days. But the moment everything broke didn't happen on the surface. It happened underground. Metro Line 5 kept running as water entered the tunnels. Drainage systems filled first. Then backup power rooms. Then the tunnels themselves. Trains stalled. Lights went out. Water rose faster than passengers could move. 14 people died trapped inside cars designed to be safe, sealed, modern. The storm was extreme. The failure was systemic. Once drainage capacity was exceeded, the metro became a container. In New York, the same pattern played out differently, but with the same logic. During remnants of Hurricane Ida in September 2021, rainfall rates exceeded 80 millimeters per hour in some boroughs. That number alone wasn't unprecedented. What was unprecedented was how fast water moved. Basement apartments filled in minutes. 13 people died, most of them living below street level. These weren't flood zones on paper. They were legal housing units in a city that assumed water would stay out. In Mumbai, residents know the drill. When rainfall crosses certain thresholds, they move valuables upward. In July 2005, when 944 millimeters fell in 24 hours, drainage systems collapsed early. Trains stopped. Roads vanished. Emergency services couldn't move. The real crisis came after the water receded. Sewage contamination triggered disease outbreaks. Power outages lasted days. Economic activity stalled across India's financial capital. Nearly 20 years later, the same thresholds still apply. Bangkok shows a slower version of collapse. Floods there don't kill in minutes. They kill over weeks. Prolonged standing water damages homes, businesses, and transport networks. In 2011, industrial zones flooded for months. Global supply chains broke. The cost reached $45 billion. Pumps ran non-stop. Canals overflowed. Drainage failed not because rain was unstoppable, but because the city had sunk below its own systems. What ties these events together is not intensity alone. It's the cascade. Drainage fills. Water backs up. Underground spaces flood. Power shuts down to prevent damage. Transit stops. Communication fails. Emergency response slows. Each layer depends on the one below staying dry. Modern cities hide their vulnerability underground. Data centers. Electrical substations. Metro control rooms. Parking structures. When these spaces flood, the city doesn't just get wet. It goes blind and deaf. In New York, a single flooded substation can cut power to tens of thousands. In Asian megacities, flooded tunnels can immobilize millions. The tragedy is that none of this feels sudden to engineers. Warning signs accumulate quietly. Flood models show capacity limits being crossed more often. Maintenance reports note rising blockages. Insurance claims climb year after year. But the system doesn't react until failure becomes visible. And when it does, the response is reactive. Emergency budgets. Temporary barriers. Blame placed on rainfall records. Once water recedes, attention moves on. The underground stays unchanged. The human cost concentrates where cities push people to live. Basement units. Ground floors. Informal housing near drainage channels. These residents face the fastest flooding and the slowest recovery. They didn't design the system. They absorb its consequences. The most unsettling part isn't that these floods happen. It's that they are increasingly predictable. Same neighborhoods. Same tunnels. Same failures. The storm changes. The outcome doesn't. Urban flooding isn't a freak accident anymore. It's a recurring test. And each time, the same parts of the city fail first. When floodwater retreats, cities call it recovery. The numbers say otherwise. Insurance is the first system to give up. In the United States, flood insurance claims have tripled since the 1990s, while insured losses now exceed $20 to $25 billion per year on average. In high-risk urban zones, private insurers are pulling out entirely. After repeated flooding in New York, parts of Queens and Brooklyn saw premiums rise by 30 to 50% in under 5 years. Some properties became uninsurable at any price. Once insurance retreats, public budgets step in. FEMA flood assistance in the U.S. has surpassed $90 billion since 2000, with a growing share spent on the same neighborhoods again and again. For every dollar spent on prevention, governments still spend $4 to $6 on post-flood recovery. Cities repair damage. They don't expand capacity. Infrastructure decay accelerates after each flood. Electrical substations exposed to water lose 20 to 40% of their operational lifespan. In London, repeated water intrusion into underground assets adds an estimated £100 to £150 million per year in additional maintenance costs, without improving resilience. Pumps, once installed, consume rising energy just to maintain baseline performance. In Bangkok, flood pumping now accounts for over 10% of the city's annual electricity use during peak seasons. Health costs remain mostly invisible. After major floods in Mumbai and Jakarta, reported cases of waterborne illness increased by 2 to 3 times in affected districts within weeks. Mold exposure after urban flooding is linked to higher rates of respiratory illness, adding long-term healthcare costs that rarely appear in flood damage statistics. In developing cities, floods contribute to millions of lost workdays per year, compounding economic damage beyond infrastructure. Property values respond unevenly. Ground floor units in flood-prone areas lose value, while upper floors gain a premium. In some coastal and river-adjacent cities, price differences between lower and higher floors have widened by 15 to 25% over a decade. Urban inequality becomes vertical. Safety rises with elevation. Public transport suffers repeated losses. In New York, flood-related subway disruptions now cost hundreds of millions of dollars annually in lost productivity. In China, the shutdown of metro systems after flooding events affects tens of millions of passenger trips per year, even outside extreme storms. Cities built for speed become cities defined by interruption. At the macro level, the pattern is clear. Global urban flood losses are projected to exceed $1 trillion per year by 2050 if current development patterns continue. Meanwhile, drainage capacity in most cities is expanding at a fraction of the rate needed to offset surface sealing. The gap widens every year. Normalization is the final stage. Flooding becomes seasonal, expected, budgeted. Businesses plan around it. Residents adapt routines. Governments shift language from prevention to resilience. Not because the problem is solved, but because reversing it would require undoing decades of development choices. The collapse isn't sudden. It's statistical. More frequent floods, higher costs, shorter recovery windows, infrastructure that works only under ideal conditions. The city still stands. It just stops functioning reliably. Urban flooding doesn't end cities. It turns them into places that fail quietly, repeatedly, and unevenly. At street level, the city looks fine. Lights on, traffic moving, towers standing. But below that surface, the system is already overloaded. Water waits in pipes sized for a different century, beneath neighborhoods built for a different math. Modern cities talk about resilience, about adaptation, about learning to live with floods. What they rarely say is what resilience actually means in practice. It means accepting that failure will happen more often. It means designing daily life around interruptions. It means shifting risk downward, underground, and onto the people least able to absorb it. The contradiction is hard to ignore. Cities spend billions reaching upward. Taller buildings, deeper basements, more underground space for parking, transit, data, power. At the same time, they refuse to make room for the one thing that always comes back: water. Every square meter of concrete added above ground removes space for water below. Every development approved today increases the bill that arrives years later. This isn't a story about weather. Rain has always fallen. Storms have always passed. The difference now is where the water is allowed to go. Or more accurately, where it isn't. Drainage systems didn't fail because engineers forgot how to build. They failed because cities chose growth they could see over systems they couldn't. Look again at the pattern. The same tunnels flood. The same basements fill. The same neighborhoods drain last. Each event is treated as an exception. Together, they form a trend. One that doesn't reverse without changing how cities are built, not just how they respond. What sits beneath your feet matters more than what rises above your head. Yet the underground remains invisible in political cycles, investment plans, and public imagination. Until it floods. Until the power cuts. Until the trains stop. Until water comes up from places it was never supposed to reach. Cities don't drown all at once. They leak. Slowly. Predictably. Unequally. And each time, the surface recovers just enough to hide what's still broken below. If modern cities keep expanding upward while their foundations stay fixed, how long can they keep pretending the problem is the rain?